Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Brad Brown and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
I am, after we had Michael Dismuke on last time, and we just like toyed and had just this little discussion about the idea of Klingons and houses and all that. I'm really glad we decided to have him back on to talk about it because
Yes.
we've been so, um, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm still on this idea of, playing within a starship and everything like that. But I forget that you can play outside that realm. And you've been a big proponent of it in the Star Wars realm. You don't necessarily, you play on the Star Wars side of things, you play outside the Empire, outside the Rebellion, outside the Republic. You play in the gray areas.
Yeah, I think as an adult, okay, that sounds wrong because like we've been playing as adults for
Yeah.
many decades now. But I think I think the notion of the outer rim to me in Star Wars is so very provocative, continues to be so very provocative for storytelling and just for exploration because and Star Wars does this better, I think, truly than any other franchise around. But there's so much opportunity to just putz around, right? You can't break it, but
Mhm.
also you can take as much from canon as you want.
Yeah.
And again, Star Wars really lends itself, but we don't tend to do that in Trek or other franchises.
No, but the idea of playing, I think, it's very easy to forget that Modifius has provided us material to play outside of
Yeah.
Starfleet and
Hmm.
play outside of the Federation. And so when we
Yeah.
kind of teased that, or when Michael teased that with us
Right.
the last time, it was only natural we had to have him back to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to be a fascinating discussion. And the use of the Dune houses mechanic.
Yeah. I remember when he said that, and we were like, "What?" Right. Go on.
Yes. Yeah, for me we both are fans of the Dune franchise.
Right.
You've
Well,
read.
of the books, but you were
Yeah.
already you've gotten into the game. You've been
I've
reading the
I've
game.
I'm a fan of the material as lit because I've
It's
been
lit,
reading it.
right? Right.
Um so I haven't played it. Um Someday perhaps, but the idea of being able to play a little bit of Dune and a little bit of Star Trek together, mishmashed.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, yeah. And it will be interesting to see because I know that they haven't started. We're going to get into the discussion. And we're going to come to find out that they really haven't, they're in the developmental phases of getting this.
They being Michael and his players.
Yeah, Michael and the
Yep.
players that are in the group.
Yep.
Um, of getting this ready to go to play. They aren't playing it yet. Um, I'm very excited to see it and read about it and see how it plays out.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, selfishly, I didn't say this during the interview, and maybe I shouldn't even say this on the record. See how this stuff comes out if it becomes available for us for something that we can like download as like a PDF or something like that as like an add-on.
Right.
Um,
I mean, if Doctor Who can show up on lower decks, come on, can't we? Can't we
yeah.
get a little Dune in our Trek?
Oh, there you go. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so before we hop over to the interview then with
Yeah.
Michael Dismuke, we should give our listeners a proviso here. Uh, we think that Michael, during the interview, especially as we get into like lore and soft canon and super soft canon, I think it's fair to say we think he can be fairly, if not extreme, then a little fringy in his views. He has some thoughts about Federation, he has some thoughts about the other great empires, quote unquote, in canon. And while you or I or we may not agree with everything, I think this is what we so appreciate about Michael, that he is just truly one of the most creative novel thinkers around Trek that we've
Oh,
encountered, that we've with whom we've talked, whom we've read, whom we've seen tweet, whatever. And so there's lots of provocative stuff that Michael's going to suggest, and it's great. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I love what it does to my thought process afterwards because it allows me to think all that more broadly about this history of the future that I care about so much.
and it spurs discussion. And if not
Oh
for the
yeah.
fact that we had a hard stop, we could have turned this
There
into
was
another
so much more to talk about.
double or triple episode just
Yeah.
because there were so many as we would be talking, literally there were like little threads where I'm like, oh, or I could have asked this, or we should have maybe talked about this thread, or what about the geopolitical thing of this thread? There were so many different things that
Yes.
we could have talked about and we didn't. And all that means is that that's just one other reason for us to have him back on down the road,
Yeah.
um, which we will.
Michael Dismuke is a certified professional in talent development and certified leadership development and succession strategist. He is a national speaker trainer and consultant, a freelance writer for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, and a published comic creator.
We've done all the introductions. Let's just head right into it. When we last had you here, Michael, you caught our attention because you were talking about this idea of the merger of some of the mechanics of Dune and the
Yes.
Klingon houses.
Yes.
And, there were a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. But before we go any further, I mean, it's been a little bit now since we've had you on. So obviously you've probably gotten into this a bit.
Yeah.
Talk as much as you, because you're in the
Wait,
game.
wait,
I don't
hold on,
want you
hold
to,
on, hold on.
yeah,
Before you ask the question, a huge congratulations on everything with 2E.
yes.
Oh, it's going really well. I have to agree. I'm very excited by the audience reaction, and even I've ran the game like in Berkeley. There's a store called Games of Berkeley that's been around for 40 years in Berkeley, California. They had
Nice.
GobCon every year, Games of Berkeley Con, and I've been enjoying running it for newbies, and it's so much easier. It's so much more streamlined than 1E. So loving that.
Hey, breaking the fourth wall as we're recording this. This is Gen Con week.
Ooh, yeah.
And and can I assume that you're in somewhere close to Gen? No, you're not.
No, I'm in
No.
California. I'm in
Yeah.
the
All
Bay
right.
Area. I was at Gen Con last year. I was planning to go this year, but the event coordinator for Medifia has actually switched roles to a different company working
Hmm.
for Gamma.
Okay.
And that was the person who was kind of like my contact to go out there. I want to go out there and do something. I just don't want to go as a fan. I actually want to go
Right.
out there and promote a little bit, but
Yeah.
there wasn't enough time to coordinate that this year. But next year I plan to be there.
Nice.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that being said, so then you probably have a little bit of time because you probably have some folks that you game with that are going to be there. You have probably started gaming this new mechanic that you've built out as much as you're able to without spoiling it.
Oh no,
Well, no,
no,
it's out there.
no.
It's
You know,
it's
Wait,
out there.
wait. Are you talking about 2E?
I'm not. I'm well. I'm talking about TUI, but I'm talking about kind of maybe we can broaden it. But I was being a little selfish and talking about your Klingon house.
No, that's an idea. So let me tell. So 2E,
Okay.
we've been playing for 6 months because we've been play
Well, I
testing
know
that
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
baby for
Yeah.
months. So
Yeah.
that this is old news for us 2E, but in my
Yeah.
game group. But that the idea we have, I've only so far been session zeroing it. In fact, by the
Oh,
time this,
Interesting.
I don't know when this is going to air. Do you know when this is
Yeah,
going
I'm
to?
looking it up right now. Pretty soon. Here, let me give you the date, and everyone else will know this because they'll be listening to it on this date or later. This will drop. Oh, this will drop in almost a month. So this is going to drop 2 episodes from as we record, which is the 26th.
Okay, so before that drops, we have on our show coming on Continuing Conversations,
Yeah.
Eliza Pearl, who ran Blood of the Void, which is
Okay.
the Clear Skies Klingon game.
Oh.
She and another one of the players, Gina Benson, named Aki for short, came on our show and we started toying around with this idea since they're kind of experts of all things Klingon. Then we have coming on October 4th. So after this runs, this show, so you're actually ahead of our podcast. On October 4th, we have Andrew Peregrine, who is the project manager for the Dune game at
Oh, that's
Modifius.
awesome.
Plus Kelly Fitzpatrick and Derek Tyler Attico, who worked on the Klingon core rulebook.
Never heard of them.
Okay.
Just kidding, guys. Just kidding.
Yeah, right. They're coming on for a crossover event, Dune meets Star Trek Adventures,
you
Klingon
guys are
style.
really branching out.
Yeah, so I'm pushing this idea hard. So
this is why every time they talk about this, I get the goosebumps going. I'm saying.
Yes. So honestly, this podcast is really the one that's dedicated to the subject for the very first time. So you're actually beating me to it because of a programming schedule.
So
awesome.
so that being said, we don't want to talk
yes,
about anything we can't.
Yes, we
okay,
do.
good.
Yes, I do.
Let's
I do.
talk about anything you wish to talk about.
Yeah, tell us.
Because this idea of spreading beyond playing within Starfleet and all that, and playing within the Empire is just, I mean, that's just so
Brad's
awesome.
been bringing this up for a while, ever since you mentioned this.
I think what it is, and again, people who could go back and watch the show with Aki and Eliza, we totally geeked out and went completely riffing on this. So this is the concept for people who are hearing this for the first time.
Okay.
Dune is a much slower game. It really, when you play it, generally, you can even play it year by year as to what your house is doing in the way of industry. So each house has one or two industries, maybe three. And picture it like this. In Dune, each house has its own planet, its own moon, maybe several planets, maybe a star system if you're a big house, depending on the size of the house and how you fit in the Empire. Because remember, spice rules everything. Spice is the center of everything. Without spice, you can't travel the planets, you can't enhance your abilities, you can't prophesy the future, little superpowers in Dune. So you can't really grow your house without having a strong link to the Emperor and Arrakis and whoever controls Arrakis. So the premise of Dune is to just build up your house. So you could actually play the game Dune and never touch Arrakis. You could say, you know what, we're just going to play a game of subterfuge, deception, and kind of like Downton Abbey on crack with Dune on just one family, all the drama that goes with that. Okay. Well, so that's the premise of Dune. And of course, your goal is to eventually control Arrakis if you can. But it's a much slower paced game because it has to do with family and marriage and bartering. And then you could jump down into missions, where you have a little bit more action if you want to. It's an option. Now, Klingons, of course, I was like, this is nothing like the Federation, right? But Klingon houses are actually very familiar, but they're not goaling for Arrakis. They're trying to get their house positioned to get a seat on the council because with the council, you control and I'm quoting in air quotes for you on the podcast, spice. Spice with the Klingons is ships and political prestige and honor and really making your house so strong that it can last hundreds of years. It could stand the test of time and political change. And so the concept came up was mixing, and me and Andrew have been talking about it for a while, of if you really want to play a Klingon campaign, it's more than just mission by mission as presented in Star Trek Adventures. You could actually build your house first. So you could live hundreds of years of your house showing its struggles, creating all this story using the Dune construct. It fits in just perfectly. The roll tables are wonderful in the Dune supplements. And then by the time your ship takes off and is into space, each one of your characters could have this history and this pride of character, almost what they call career events for federations. They could have this house legacy that you now bring into the game with your characters. And at the end of the character, I introduced the concept of the Federation Klingon War Campaign. At the end of a single mission, you decide whether that benefited your house or not. Did it set you back or not?
Okay.
And so you could play this amazing game that, to me, and then we'll talk about it later with y'all, but talking about what are the industries that make the Klingon Empire tick. It's more than just photon torpedoes and
that's
bathtubs.
Cool.
So what is a house and what can they be experts of? Right. That's where I would riff with all of you.
Oh, I'm thinking triple research, but
yeah, right. Who is the triple exterminator expert? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What else? I have a million ideas, so I'm going to shut up so you guys can think.
No. This is
what fuels. what industries make up the Klingon Empire?
Pork breeding,
Targ
I mean,
breeding? Hell yeah. Targ breeding.
I mean, but you think about that. Think about the industries that would, I mean, what kind of agriculture exists within the
Good.
empire?
Right. Who makes sure that when they're devastating planets, they're still preserving the agricultural resources? Because we see the war side of the Klingons because that's how the
Right.
Federation presents them.
Right.
Yeah.
But who provides gawk to all the ships while they're deployed?
Yes. How about this one? This is when we played with Eliza, and we really went off with this one. Klingon opera. Who is the
Oh, that's
house
awesome.
that controls Klingon opera? Who's the house that designs the opera houses in the Baroque fashion that it is? Who and is it possible that since Klingons record their history through song, that opera is more of a political tool than an art form? That's the way they record or re-record their history. So could you have a house just about who controls that propaganda machine?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Or even the faith that revolves around, revolves around Kalis and so on. Is there a house or houses that
right, like a house of clerics, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where are
That would be
they?
fascinating.
Well,
Yeah.
where are they? And then so now you're seeing it because this is going to we have way more to we accidentally stumbled this onto this conversation and continuing conversations. We have not expounded on this yet, and I know we're going to expound even more with Andrew. But think about what your point there. Who started the religion and keeps it? Because we know, like on Boreth, they definitely have time crystals and you have those monks. But is it possible that Kalis was not a god, but he was the first Klingon general who pushed back the Herks? So the Herks are, of course, where the Klingons got their ships from originally. Those ones we see in Discovery Season 1 that look nothing like Klingon ships we've seen before. Those were actually not Klingon technology. That was recovered Herc technology. Those ships were hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So is it possible that the religion grew up out of a military need to push back the Herc? And is it possible that the Klingons were once a peaceful people until they actually had to become warlike to overcome their alien extraterrestrial conquerors? So who controls that knowledge? And is it the priesthood that says we have to buy into this warrior culture now because it saved us once? But maybe
they barely touched on the idea when they cloned Kalis.
Right.
That
yeah.
How did that play in? They only touched on it very, very. They touched on it a bit in TNG, and it only came up in the periphery during DS9 and some conversations with Worf and all that. So how does that play into that? I mean, holy moly.
Is it possible the Klingon were originally a peaceful people, so they had to evolve culturally to survive enslavement from the Herc? And so maybe that's why they're a little bit more paranoid about extraterrestrials. So when the Federation comes saying we come in peace, remember Discovery Season 1, when they say we come in peace, it's like, no, you don't. When all of our experience has been, if you come in mass with all these ships, you're coming to conquer. We're not letting you get a lead up on us next time. We show you we're tough. Now let's talk. So maybe Federation completely missed their historical legacy. And this ain't the way you approach Klingons, is flying into their space.
Mm-hmm.
First contact is not how you do it with them. Yeah. And so we just started opening up, be the house that was the religion, that was the clerics that made Kalis from man to God.
So interesting.
It's not canon, but what you might find interesting is the non-canon STO story of how they played out the story of the founders and the Dominion.
I'm familiar with that. What happened?
Yeah, it would go on and on, but it's kind of a similar type of thing where, they came to power because they developed that type of attitude and that kind of the xenophobia because of it. Mm-hmm. But what you were kind of talking about, there's, for some whatever reason, it kind of zinged in my head that, and it's been a while since I played that storyline in STO. It's been a while since I played STO. But if you ever get a chance, maybe I'll find the link because the stories are out there. Someone has written them out. It might be an interesting quick read, maybe 20-30 minute read, just to see how they wrote that storyline in STO.
Right.
Because it how you explained it could also kind of influence in some ways some of the storylines that may play out in the Klingon
I'm
side.
still
Jason,
catching up with the Hercs. I consider myself a pretty hardcore Trekkie, but I don't know like anything about that history.
N-
Is
no
that
one.
canon or soft canon?
No, there's soft canon for sure that's
Yep.
mentioned about the Herc.
Yeah.
But
I mean, kind of
again,
blowing my mind.
the fact that it's so vague, that might be part of the propaganda machine, because if this big religion formed up around Kalis just to inspire people, and then later on you find out, well, no, we actually were dominated for thousands of years. We were weak until finally
Yeah.
one guy inspired us to rise up. Like, we see that happen historically all the time, right?
Right.
We don't have the nitty gritty of what really it was like for the
Right.
for forming nations, and people want to always erase when they looked weak, when we all were at some point,
Absolutely.
right? They want to act like we were born from boggy marshes of godhood, and that's not truth. And so how powerful is that to Klingons to instill fear? Like, they're like, instill fear first, then they show us respect. Now we're on a negotiating, which is totally opposite of the Federation, right?
Right, right.
Lead with love, kind of. So we got into the houses from that level, and that's where I would develop my house. Like, where were you and your family over the last hundreds of years supporting the propaganda,
Right.
supporting,
Right.
here's and talking about the diversity of houses as the way of almost politics. You meet the Klingons in Discovery season 1, where they even look different. They're harsher. They're even cannibals.
Yep.
They eat their own. That's not every Klingon, but that became the Federation image of the Klingon, because this was the house that had first. These were the houses that got into space using the Herc equipment. These were the most harshest worshippers of Kalis as a deity. They did not represent the majority of Klingons, which we haven't really met till DS9.
Right.
Right.
Very
Right.
true.
Yeah, and Worf does not represent Klingon culture. He was assimilated,
Yeah.
right? And so exploring that diversity with your houses and understanding why the Klingons think they need the we're mean propaganda machine, to me, is way more interesting than just having a Worf on a ship.
So what what are some of the other houses? What are some of the other angles you all have been taking?
Okay, so again, this is all in riffing, and where
Yeah,
I'm.
yeah.
I plan to. We're playing. Our next campaign is going to be a Klingon campaign, and so we're going to build all this backstory onto it. One of the things I'm playing with is, what if the Herc is the Klingon word for Hirogen? Because we actually know that the Klingons' Eastern Galactic Front heads toward the Delta Quadrant.
Right.
And we also have seen the Hirogen network and how vast it is in Voyager. In fact, it was so vast that you had one vessel that got close enough to the border of the Delta Quadrant that the Hirogen network picked it up and they started transmitting messages through it. Now, the Klingon exploratory vessels probably already hit that network way before. In fact, we know for a fact from Voyager that there was one ship that was 80 years traveling into the Delta Quadrant that thought that B'Elanna Torres' daughter Meral was a god. They thought that was the savior of the people. So we already know the Klingons have already been in that space. What if the Hirogen, who are a hunter species, are the ones who first came in and took over the Klingons, and they emulate the Hirogens, and that's where their weaponry came from, their armor, their battle styles. So that's where I would play, as like Hirogens versus Klingons.
See, this is why you're so successfully moving into Star Trek lit, right? Writing fiction because because you keep coming up with this stuff. That's absolutely fascinating. I'm gonna have to think about that tonight. That's so cool.
And so what if from if the Federation would have taken time to study that and think about it,
yeah,
should they be thanking the Klingons that they were the species that slowed down the Hirogen's expansion into that Alpha Quadrant?
Right, right. Oh.
Before humankind would have been wiped out by the Hirogens. They were not ready for the Hirogens.
Absolutely.
They would have been a hunt. This would have been the predators on planet
I was just
Earth.
gonna say, yeah.
I
Throw
think
a
it's just
pistol and walk away.
It's a reminder too that this is a game that we've got a lot. We've got such so much material.
Yeah.
And there's this chunk of material out there that we don't talk much about. that takes us in such a different direction. I mean, we're talking about playing Star Trek Adventures, but we're not talking about playing Star Trek Adventures. I mean, we
Well,
are.
well, Jim Johnson makes a point of it. He says
Yeah,
this is the thing about Star Trek. Every
Yeah.
genre fits into
Right.
Star Trek.
yeah,
Yep.
And we've
yeah,
only
Yep.
explored this much of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So for the game, if some people are like, well, Star Trek is boring. Well, no, that's not true. Maybe you're bored by the Federation and how it does stuff, but there's a lot of universe out there. You could have a Dungeons and Dragons planet if you want.
So my
You know?
a case in point.
Yeah.
So my wife actively detests Star Trek. She has many other admirable qualities, but she actively, not just as neutral, dislikes it. And,
Hmm.
psychologically, we got to get into the concept of reaction formation. That's not important right here. But once when I was, I think, at work, this was years ago when my daughters were little, she and my younger daughter ended up watching, I'm blocking on the episode name, but they ended up watching just by accident the Ressican Flute episode with
Oh, I
Picard.
loved it.
Right. Well,
Oh,
I mean, brilliant storytelling, right?
oh.
But to your point, so they watched that, and Amy, my wife, like begrudgingly acknowledged, like, that was really good.
Inner Light.
Okay.
That's my favorite.
Inner
That's
Light,
my
thank you.
favorite TNG
It's
episode.
yeah, and so like to your point, it Trek can do so many different things well, as long as it's well written, it
Yeah.
can incorporate that genre. Okay, so a question about the Klingon houses, and maybe there isn't an answer for this, but like you said earlier, in Dune, the ultimate basic arbiter is spice, who has
Yes.
control of spice directly or indirectly. Right, the spice must flow, period. In Trek and with the Klingon houses, like you said, there's not any one thing so specific. Have you found with your group or with your groups sort of a conceptual litmus test of what's enough to cross that threshold?
Well, I actually have an answer for that. We've talked about that
Okay.
because the being on the Klingon High Council and or having influence on the Klingon High Council
Mhm.
can make or break your family. We've seen that. We've seen
Yep.
entire houses wiped out because of dishonor
Right.
or enslaved, right? So I pose that in this manner, the Klingon are more like the Ferengi, that they actually know business really well. In fact, we see the
Ah,
episode where Quark marries
Krilka.
Kruka, and he becomes honored by the Klingon because he actually fixes their economic system to bring the house up. So why have we not explored Klingon economics as a way to get
yeah.
honor?
Yeah.
That
It's
is one of my favorite. That because she comes on, I think it's a two-story. It's not really an arc. She comes back for another
right.
story, but those two episodes are phenomenal episodes.
They are, and it really showed you the Klingons are not throw Klingon over everything. They're
Right.
just like,
Yeah,
how are you helping me build my house up?
yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine the Federation comes in and says, we want to now introduce to you a non-monetary system. That's like trying to force that on the Ferengis and calling them enemies and declaring we now have to war the Ferengis because they won't give up what is their religion. The
Right.
religion of the Ferengis is
Right.
money, so they're never going to give
Right.
it up, right?
Yep.
So again, I'm not saying I'm anti-Federation, but anyone who plays with me knows I'm anti-Prime Directive, I'm anti-Vulcan,
Oh.
and I do believe Federation is generally acted like colonists, and it's not their fault. It's because it was written in the '60s when that was just the way TV was written, where colonists were heroes, and so,
Yep.
and so now the new skeptic generation is re-looking at this like, well, why can't I be a Klingon? Why do I need the Federation? So again, you have Federation coming in saying they want to have peace and dismantling their economic systems, which is their house, which is their spice.
Right.
Instant war. It's not gonna be done. So I think the houses should play to that too. Is um, if playing characters and playing houses is like, well, we have a different set of directives. Our
Yeah.
directives is
Yeah.
build your house up at any cost.
Yeah. Very
If you
cool.
if your
Very
house
cool.
is weakened, your honor is gone.
Right.
So that kind of becomes your prime directive for each episode is like, did you build up your house or did you tear down your house? Can you get songs written by your house? Can you give influence to the opera so they start singing about your house in popular music?
Well, then let me ask this. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so
That's cool.
if you do that, then if you go, then if I'm playing and I go the Duras route,
Mm-hmm.
and I am Duras, and I'm playing. I
Just for the
mean
record,
that.
I've called you worse.
Yes, you. Yeah.
He's called you a big
Minus the.
Duras. I
Yeah,
already
yeah.
called you a
You
big
might
Duras a couple of times.
remove Dur and add
So
lots of
true.
other stuff in front of it, but
It did start with the D, but sorry. Go on.
yeah. I walked into that one. But what I'm saying, just in context of what you're saying is are you saying that if I kind of went that skullduggery type of route, that was, you know,
The answer is it's all who gets to write the history books.
got it.
So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
doing skullduggery,
Love
but
it.
at the same time you're now I'm taking this to Dune,
Yeah.
and at the same time you're bribing the opera writer and the composers and the poets
Right.
and the religious people to say and cover over for you, because in Dune that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're rolling, and I would actually take just to say when I'm playing the Star Trek Adventures mission level of the Klingon game, I would be using the Star Trek STA stats.
Yeah.
The minute I go to how's the house doing this year with its propaganda machine, maneuvering, and bribing, I would then use the Dune
Okay.
2D20 stats. I would write
Yep.
those up separately.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so one is like, how are we doing on the political front and relationships and bribing and backyard conversations and seat at the opera assassinations? Like, how are we doing there? And then what missions does my ship have to go off to help that overall agenda?
Right. Yeah.
Which is
Okay.
the Federation Klingon War Campaign, which is
Yeah.
Al
Yeah.
Spader's lead writer on.
Yeah.
And,
Very
and
cool.
so to me, you're creating the Klingon Empire in a richness that we've never seen on television.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which is beautiful.
Well,
It's
you're telling
yeah.
the story, and I'm just thinking to myself, you're telling the story in a way, and I can go in from a Mac. I can go in at a Mac. We've seen it at a very macro. I mean, even that's
Mm-hmm.
more micro than we've been able to see it. I'd be able to go in and watch your story and be able to see at a micro level the details going into the spider web inside.
Yeah. See,
You know,
that's where it's cool. That's
Yeah, they're not.
interesting.
They're not killing. The thing is, they're not. I don't picture that. The Federation wants to make you think that, and we see the characters make comments like it, that they're in the inner worlds killing each other. No, they're not. They're more like Dune. If they're going to murder someone,
Right.
they have to make sure to murder someone where vengeance is not coming back on their house, where it
Right.
doesn't become on the news service in a negative way
Right.
to make them lose honor. They're crafty people.
And
they alluded
we did see that in canon. It's just widely ignored because of all the independent episodes.
Yeah.
during the Civil War episodes.
Right.
Was that in TNG? The Civil War episodes,
Yeah.
the Klingon Civil
That's
War
what I'm
episodes,
thinking.
when they would all get
Yeah.
together and they would
Mm-hmm.
drink, even though they were on separate sides. When there was some assassination attempts and all that, it was made out to be that was not regular, and
Yes.
that was very, very frowned upon, and that was dishonorable. Um,
Right.
so but that's as far as they went.
But you're right.
You
No,
know,
because I think the episode with Riker, when he was the officer exchange program episode, you can't just attack the captain. You better be sure that you've done all the political footwork behind you so
Yeah.
that you don't get assassinated next. So that's very much like
Yes.
Dune. That's Dune level stuff.
Right.
But that's not the way the Federation wants to portray the Klingons. They want to portray them as, oh, they get mad, they're going to kill you. No, they're going to kill you, one, if you're going to take honor away from their house. And if you, this is a big part of it. Why are they okay going into space to blow up a random Federation ship? Because blowing up a random Federation ship does not affect a house. It makes you look tough, which they want.
Right.
That they have that our ship has the capability to defend us against outsiders, because that's big to Klingons. So going to blow away a Federation ship is a big deal. But if all of a sudden there's a Klingon member of some house on that ship, that's going to make them think twice.
Right.
Or if there's some tie to a Klingon house that blowing up this Federation ship just costs to deal with this house. See, and that's the intricacy of the Klingon Empire we don't see.
Yeah, go back and start thinking now. Now go back and watch Star Trek
3, Search for Spock.
Yeah, go back and watch
Seriously?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Grissom.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go back and watch 3. Go back and watch 4 when you have the Klingon ambassador there preaching again.
Yep.
And even go back and watch 6
Mm-hmm.
and think about that from a different, when you have David Warner in as Chancellor Gorkon.
Well, even the
Yeah.
even the arrogance. Remember that everyone deserves inalienable human
It was
rights.
Yeah.
such an important scene in that film, and it
I
was
was like,
so
oh,
far ahead of its time.
it was.
And like if you were paying attention, you got it. Like,
She
like
said
that,
human. The even word is racist. The word is even
right. Like
racist.
that really,
Shakespeare in the
really stuck
original
with me.
Klingon, you
Right.
know.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I mean, which is cute, but like that was like the core of the movie right there.
Hmm.
But it just didn't, that's not what people remember.
Yeah, they never found a way. And to me, the lesson learned with this is this: we all agree. We're all in leadership at some point or business. You meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
That's the way to be successful with teams or cultures or
Right.
diversity is you meet people where they're at. The Federation did not do that. They did not do that. They did not back up. They did not show humility. They didn't, and the Romulans already know this because, okay, of course, is the Vulcan agenda of not wanting to meet people where they're at, you know. And I want to show the Klingons the houses that there's something to be honored, that they've had value over the decades and millenniums and stuff like that, and let you play this rich character that when you're playing this character, you should be feeling like any other country that's ever been colonized, clinging to your culture,
Yeah.
violently clinging to your culture, is what I would play with a House of Klingons game.
Can I assume maybe I'm assuming incorrectly, but are there potential stories churning in your head that may show up at some point down the road, somewhere published just based off of all this? You don't have to answer. Let me just rephrase. I hope there is. You don't have to
I mean,
answer.
we've seen that
I
guilty smile before, so it
Yeah, I
kind of
just hope there
answers
is,
it, but
just because I think
hopefully
now
some of this will go to paper.
I have not. I will plead ignorance in terms of I am not as well read in the Star Trek, the Bantam universe as
Oh
many
no,
are.
not at all.
I'm not that much either. Yeah, I wish I
I'm not.
was. Yeah.
I could probably talk to Jim and others out there who are much better. Maybe there's a lot of material out there written in this realm, and I just haven't seen it or I don't know it. I would love to read more in
There isn't.
this.
There,
See,
believe me,
that's
there are some good Klingon books I've read, and now I'm at this point where I'm kind of scared to read them because I don't want them to influence me.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm at that point with a lot of stuff. But no one has ever. I've never walked away from a Klingon book or story thinking, the Federations might be the bad guy here. And to me, that's the honor you'll actually give to the Klingons is when you actually can see their point of view. Because in my game, in my fan fiction that I run with my players, they don't like Romulans. They're into Romulans. They're like Romulans did the right thing, becoming isolationists years ago. And that took a lot of writing to defend that position. That they're pro Romulan. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how you can. I see how you could weave a. I can see how you could weave a story in a way that would make that position from a story perspective.
Well, the premise is simple. The premise
Yeah.
is simple. Again, this kind of you could play Romulan houses the same way because Romulans actually have senators. They have the Senate, which you're
Right.
trying to vie
Right.
to get into the Senate, so you can play it the
Right.
same way. But basically, the Federation was insulted that this culture wanted to stay private without Federation influence. Have we heard that before in modern history? Even though that culture is quite satisfied with itself and doesn't need Western civilization to be successful, someone says, no, because of that, there must be something wrong with you. Because of that, you must be our enemy because you don't want to be with us. That is the Romulans to me, is that they were like, we're fine. How many alien species can you name that live within the Romulan Empire besides the Remans?
Not many.
But there's a lot. And are they happy? Is it possible that they're happy and that the Romulans are out to protect them because they have paradisiac conditions and maybe they have a system and the Federation coming in, like they're like, no, you have the Vulcans and the Vulcans have never been in our best interests. We left Vulcan a long time ago for a specific reason. And you come at us like we're enemies because we say we don't want to introduce ourselves to you. So now we're your enemies. And the Vulcan propaganda machine is behind that. Yeah, I'm thinking from real social situations that happen that all of a sudden you tell the colonists, don't step on my shore. And they have to now work up a propaganda machine to get onto your shore.
Yeah. See,
Hmm.
see this idea. Yeah, this is going to be. How are you? So now you've got this. You're in this. You're obviously churning out, you know, and you're building out this idea to play. You're going to, in effect, play this, and you're going to record these. These are going to be episodes, correct?
Yeah. So how we're gonna? Well, I write
Yeah.
everything down. So we make mini
Mhm.
novellas. And sometimes we are talking about playing some live. So here's what's going to happen. So if you know
Because
the
what I would like to know is, I selfishly,
yeah,
I'd like to be able to follow along. That's why
yeah,
I want to know.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, here's how it'll work. So using the Dune model
Okay.
in mixture with the Federation Klingon War model
Yep.
from the tactical
Yep.
campaign. First, we build your house. Then we do kind of a year or maybe even a month of action using the Dune rolling system to
Okay.
see how is your house shifting in power.
Okay.
Then I wrote a module for Star Trek Adventures called the Kittimer Accords. I don't know if you saw that. It's free. It's a free mission brief module,
Hmm.
and it's all based on Star Trek 6. And when the Kittimer Accords were signed before, during, and after that event happened, how did all of these houses inside react? Not
Right.
all of them were in favor.
Right.
It's impossible. This
Right.
and think about if you were on a deep space Klingon assignment and you fly in, and 2 weeks later you get the message
Yep.
that Praxis exploded
Right.
and the Klingons are now allies with the Federation. Imagine if you're on that ship. So
Yeah.
our players are on that ship.
Oh, interesting.
So we go from this big house. This is where your houses were pre-Kittimer.
Okay.
Now you play a mission where you find out about Kittimer. We zoom down to that ship level. Then we zoom out and say what happens in the couple weeks or month as leading up to the Kittimer Accord sign. So we're going to play at high
Yeah.
level from the whole how. How's your family reacting to this with dice
Yep.
rolls and power shift? And then we go down to modules where your ship decides really what side it takes on through a series of missions to support Azit-Bur or to fight against Azit-Bur. And the Klingon Accords module, if you look at them that I wrote 10 mission modules in there. It's all about what stand do you take during this tumultuous time in Klingon
Very
history. And
interesting.
at the end of it, are you allies of the Empire or enemies of the Empire?
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's fascinating. That sounds like fun to play and to watch and
Yeah.
to read.
Yeah. See, this is gonna be something I'm going to follow, just because it's going to be it's Star Trek, but it's from a different angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's expanding it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's and I'm looking for, and it's funny, I think what we were alluding to before, and I mentioned this to Jason, just be over the past like month with all sorts of stuff, nothing bad, just all sorts of stuff going on. I had kind of like had needed to breathe a bit from role playing games. And so
Yeah.
I put something down, and um I texted a mutual contact and just said, I had to put something down, and said something about Trek, and they said, Trek covers everything. Just don't forget, Trek just doesn't cover, a starship. And that's what
Yeah.
triggered, that's what something as simple as that
Hmm.
reminded me of it.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden I realized, then all of a sudden the Klingon book came out, and then all of a sudden I remembered you were going to be on, and I'm like, okay, the Kismet, whatever the case may be, this is just a reminder
Yeah,
that,
we have one more season of our current game, which is a Federation ship. We're in our sixth,
well,
going into our
you have a lot, you still,
Jeez.
you have a lot that you're building out still too, and everything.
yeah, I'm finishing the sixth season. But once that's
Man.
over, we want to explain. We want to explore two things. We want to explore the Klingon houses, and then we also want to explore the Fenris Rangers too, which are
Yeah, it'd be
again
interesting.
non-Federation games. So
Yeah.
to your point, Brad, we're trying to show that you can have a game that's like Dune, and then the next time you can have a game that's like Firefly. And we're trying to show
Yes.
how cool the Star Trek universe can be.
I want one more. Now, I know this sounds super mundane, but I have been on this kick for the past few, I don't know now how many years. I want to see in whatever venue, right? I take it through the RPG lens. I would love to see like a canon show, whatever. And I get that this would be interesting to everyone. I want to see a day in the life of the Federation citizen. I love Starfleet. I don't want to see Starfleet. I want to see, right, more than the little hints. Don't
Mhm.
shuck clams. Don't go to an apartment with your robotic girlfriend. I want to see what's it like for the, I mean, whatever, hundreds of
Shuck
billions of
clams and
people.
a robotic girlfriend. Is
I
that
was
really
pulling
what?
from Michael's. Oh, maybe not. No, DS9 and Picard season one. Come on,
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
okay,
I mean,
okay,
It was a
but
robotic girlfriend. Yeah.
yeah,
okay.
What do
no,
you want to
it's.
see? So
I want to see
like
the
give
day in the life where what does life look like at the start of the 25th century? Not Starfleet. What are the complexities of life? What are the joys and challenges and whatnot when you're not off exploring or fighting?
okay, well there's a dream I've had. No, don't yawn, Brad. It's
No,
actually
no,
a
no, I'm not
really
yawning. I have some, no, something I want to say, but
no,
finish your
because
story because
I
I
because
That's funny.
Jason, there's something I've been wanting to work on, and if you want to collaborate on it, I'm all for it because I just haven't had time to do it, but I need
Yeah.
inspiration to do it. I've been. Does anyone here use the call map?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the call map is when you go to bed. There's sleep stories,
Oh.
and there are
Oh,
people.
Calm app. Oh, I've used it in the past for research.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you know what
Yeah.
it is. Okay,
It's very good.
and I've actually dreamt. I started writing when I got busy with other stuff. I started writing a lower deck thing of what it's like just to be doing your normal duties when you wake up in the morning during like gamma shift or alpha shift, and you're going into
Yeah,
the
right.
sensor. And it was very like the way I wrote it was like as you move into this and picture the sound of the engine behind you, that calming sound, right? As you
Right.
move into the sensor array, you decide to begin a level one diagnostic since your supervisor explained to you that you'll be coming into a Jovian system very soon.
Brad hasn't listened to the Calm app, but this makes perfect
Okay,
sense.
okay,
it does.
right, and so as you go to bed, you're sitting there just performing your duties. One of my favorite ones in
Oh,
the
that's
Calm
so
app is
funny.
called "The Perfect Way to Rise and Shine," and it's all. And I'm big into organization and micro and to minimalist. And so she just talks about how everything is where it needs to be as she pours her tea to get ready to bed, as she puts on her lavender scents candle, and she opens up a book, as she wraps herself with her cat. And it's this for 30 minutes. I don't make it through 5 minutes of it, right? And so I thought about doing a call map. So to your point, a day in the life of the Federation citizen, because it's not
Oh,
a, it's low stress. It's pleasurable. So imagine if we wrote it and then we just got the sound effects behind us of like e-rails passing and
oh,
shuttles flying
I'm in.
overhead
Let
Okay,
me
and the
know.
sound of the
You're
city. And we
inspiring
just do
me.
30 minutes. We just do 30 minutes of what it's like. And we could
Yeah.
just pour these things out, put them on YouTube. They'll probably get a million hits.
Jason, we had the comm app in
Yeah.
1996, if you remember. So this is going to borderline creepy,
No, he did
but
not have the Calm app in
no, no,
1996.
no,
This
no, no,
is
no, no.
this is. Oh
This
no, where are
so
you going?
okay.
Okay.
So 1996. So Jason and I'm going to just get rib backstory. Jason and I met when we went to college together. I left
Mhm.
after freshman year, but obviously we stayed connected. I would go up and visit. He had um, the Star Trek Enterprise
Oh,
technical manual on
CD-ROM,
on
right. It was
CD-ROM.
it
Oh,
was a
I didn't know
be
you could do that.
it was a beautiful thing when it came out. It
On
was a
CD-ROM.
walkthrough. It was
It
really
was a
cutting edge at the
walkthrough.
time. I still have it.
But
Yeah.
at night when we would read or relax, I would sometimes crash in his
Yes.
room.
And we
Sometimes I
just
would
put on the
crash and
audio.
we'd put on the audio, which is
We'd
the
pull the
ambient
right.
enterprise
We'd pull
noise.
the files off of the disk. Now
They
you
were
could just go to YouTube.
Yes,
yeah.
and put it on.
And yep. And it's sometimes I stopped doing it, but for several years when I moved over to the university and I was like working or writing or whatever in the office, I would put on the
Yes.
background thrumming of engineering.
I have it
Yes.
at my no, at my work. Okay, this is you're gonna crack up. So I have it at my office workspace. This is pre-pandemic because
Yeah, yeah,
we
of
were all in the
course.
office. So I have the three screens,
Yep,
and I have that L cars. The Trek 47 thing, the L
yep.
cars 47 thing. I have that so that people come in and they'd be
Oh,
looking like, what kind of pro? They had no idea. People who had
that's
Star Trek, they thought
hilarious.
it was like advanced Excel, right? And I was
Right.
like, oh yeah, this. I would lie to them. I'm like, oh yeah, well I'm working on a new statistical analysis of the learners in the property operations division, and they'd look at it like, what? So,
New
anyways,
pivot tables,
right. So me and my direct report was also in the same office with me at the time, and she had triple screens. So we had the background noise of Voyager's bridge and those L
Ooh.
cars going when you walk in, and we'd be working. To
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
felt like I was in space. It made the
Yes.
office so relaxing for me.
Yes.
I was working.
Oh,
I didn't get a
that's
chance
so
to
good.
And
I
we
have to
I
dim the
go back
lights
on.
too. We would dim the
oh
Oh
we would
yeah.
knock out the overheads and just have like our side lamps, so it looked very dim, like we're the midnight shift on Voyager.
Right. Right. Oh, that's so good.
the other night we all three are working on a similar project
Mhm.
right now together.
Okay.
Different pieces, and I have been in kind of a block for it. Well, I didn't sleep the other night, and Jason saw some of the product of it. Well, I ended up putting on the the actual noise from the technical manual. I didn't go out and find any other. I went and found a
Oh, that's
10-hour YouTube
awesome. Yeah.
stream of
On
it.
YouTube,
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
if there's all kinds of streaming
yeah.
TNG on YouTube, just
right? But
audio.
I
I,
used the audio, but I didn't know the technical manual.
I will find it and send it. It's in my
Yeah,
history.
please.
Yes. And I put that on, and
We'll have to put that in show notes.
yeah, I blew through 3 hours worth of work
See,
because my wife gets
Yeah.
up at 4 to work out, and she comes out because I put it in my earbuds, and she comes out and she goes, "Were you writing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she probably, and the way I said yeah, she probably wondered if it really was writing that I was doing,
A little
but
more
I,
Ferengi than Romulan in
oh, it was,
response.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
you
it
got
was
to
fun.
send that. Yeah, you got to
Yeah, you
send
got to
that to
send it
I'll
to both
me.
of
send it.
us.
I'll send it
Yeah.
because I wanted that exact noise, and it's a small clip. It's probably 45 to 60 seconds, but they just kept looping it because
Yeah.
back then it's a 650 megabyte CD-ROM. They only had a
Mhm.
Right.
certain amount of room,
Right.
and it was a wave file, I think a 44
Yep.
hertz wave file.
Yep.
So after
Um,
we get done with this current project, can we work on a series of 30-minute
No,
sleep stories based on
if
the
you know,
average life
Michael,
of the Federation citizen?
if you're serious, I'm in. You're actually this is inspiring me. Uh I I've been playing with the notion. I've been playing with the notion of yeah, I've been itching because of some feedback I got uh on our first Aaron and my first book. I've been itching to write a little more fiction, but not like anything significant,
Mhm.
right? And this isn't like I think I know what I want to do now. And yeah, yes, count me in. This would be
Okay,
fascinating.
that'd be fun. And just to be mundane, it's like be
Yeah,
mundane to relax people. Like to me, it's about getting into a better future. Like
right.
I want to put my mind at ease, like I'm already there.
Okay, so this is a deep cut, but as we maybe kind of start to move toward the end here. So this I think this well, I don't know how much it predates. So when I was a kid, like little, I had a bunch of the Osborne books out of the UK. So these were all these super futuristic ones. There were ones on war, there were ones on medicine and health. There were it was the 80s. It was a very right, it was the just
Mhm.
the height of the start of the like the shuttle program, Apollo was still in the rearview mirror. Like it was a time of right, like unbridled futurism.
Yeah.
And I had all these books, and then actually about a decade ago, I searched and like through eBay and whatnot, found the ones I never had and got them.
Oh
And then
wow.
I also I grew up on the Kids' Whole Future catalog, right? Which was just, like Stuart Brand, but for kids. And I bring this up because there were specific images in there that stayed with me all my life that showed like daily life in the living room two
Mhm.
centuries from now. Like
Hmm.
all these, and it's exactly what you're talking about, but
That's
just
cool.
the images, not the story.
Right. Well, you could use those for inspiration when
A
writing.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, describe those.
100%.
And
Right.
just so you all know, I looked on YouTube and I found the Star Trek TNG Interactive Technical Manual Part 1 Structural Features.
Uh,
And it's
hmm,
from the CD-ROM, it says.
and then
see.
no one sees Michael for 49 hours.
I'm listening to this tonight.
Yes, you are.
I'm not putting on the TV. I'm actually gonna
Yeah.
just put it on with my speakers upstairs and see if the wife
I know.
notices, like, what
I
the
really
heck are
want
y'all?
to do this now too.
This was I mean back then this was I mean there was dial-up internet in the dorms. I would come
Mhm.
up and visit Jason and the guys that I was connected with there on the weekends. They would go to class. I immediately would sit at Jason's computer, put this disc in,
Yeah.
and walk around the Enterprise,
Just to hear the ambiance and
hear the house
experience the right.
on his Mac
Performa
Performa
578. It
575.
was a
Eight.
simpler
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Man,
Yes.
you know what? You know what? I'm looking at it right now. Well, see, I'm getting into my creative mode. I don't know if any of your listeners are the type to like steal copyright ideas, but I mean, we have recorded it here. But
Yeah.
this was a 1994 Simon and Schuster interactive
Yep.
production.
That's right.
I
Yep.
wonder
I've
if
got it
they
on my
would.
shelf.
I wonder if they would ever sell that off to somebody, and then you could strike a deal with Calm and have the licensing rights to it. I mean, I love like getting copyrights
Interesting.
and trademarks.
That is a
Yeah.
question.
My dream is I've been trying to get the Last Starfighter
Yeah.
trademark and rights to Last Starfighter is my
Oh
dream.
God, was that a class? Oh, such a good
Eric
one.
Campbell set me on a mission to try to do it, and I've been
Did you just
trying to
say
get
did you say Last Starfighter?
Yeah.
the Last Starfighter. I'm trying to get the. I've been dying to get the rights to that. I've been
I
searching.
just watched it last night.
Oh, it's
Oh.
epic. If anyone, I've been the guy who owns. I forgot his name, but he lives in San Francisco, and I've been trying to get a meeting with the guy because I think if Modifius could get the Last Starfighter license, I'm like, dang,
I would help write whatever you guys wanted for that for free.
put it in the
Seriously.
universe. I want the Last Starfighter license. I want the Last Starfighter license.
First of all, I love Robert Preston.
Mhm.
You know,
he was
Music
good in
Man
it.
and everything like that. That was his last thing before he passed away.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
You know?
he had the best voice.
Yes.
Best voice. Yeah.
And I just watched it. Something popped up on YouTube. I don't know why, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch that last night.
Anyways, I put the dreams
yeah.
out there in the universe. Whenever I think it's highly unlikely, I'll be able to actually do something. I speak vocally about it.
If they could get Space 1999, they can get
right
the Last Starfighter. So, hey, we appreciate.
I don't know if that's equivalent.
Space 1999. If they can get something obscure.
I thought you were talking about quality. Yeah, obscurity.
No.
Okay,
oh no,
I'm with you. Okay.
The other one. I mean, my thing is, if I actually scored getting something like Last Starfighter, then I'd be on the hunt for Enemy Mine after that. I want.
Well, I mean, you're not
Mine.
going to get that because they're bringing it back.
They really? Who's going to play?
I don't. Do you know who's producing that?
Isn't it Abrams? No. Who's producing Enemy Mine? Who the new
that story is so good.
So
that
good.
is one of the best sci-fi stories ever on film.
Stephen Friedman.
Zombies. Sorry, I had to say it.
The Enemy Mine
hold on.
Remake.
No, who's behind that?
No. You got to understand. I'm surprised you don't know this. The remake of Enemy Mine.
Yeah.
Okay. The producer for that one.
Yep.
I want you to guess who it's going to be.
No, I already was wrong.
I'm not good with producers.
No. You need to guess this one. Take a guess.
Okay, fine. Steven Spielberg.
No. All the producers that we could guess Star Trek Universe that it could be.
It's Terry Metalis.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
it's going to be amazing.
Wow.
It's going to be.
When does it come out? Do you know?
2029. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, they just announced it, so I don't know. But you think of that story and that producer for a film like that. I mean, what could they do now?
Yeah, because that story is even more relevant now than ever.
Way more, though. It'll be hard, I think, to how do you recast and do homage and not lose something for that?
Well, I hope they keep it minimal too. Like, don't have a chase scene. Don't introduce vehicles. It was so alien, a planet on its own. It was so beautifully simple that I hate when they dance these things up and it's just like confusing. You know,
don't try to make it modern. Make it good.
I would even go grungier. I'd even say if you're going to do anything, get rougher with it. Don't make it pretty.
Right, because it shouldn't have been. It wasn't supposed to be.
It's a hard planet to live on.
I'm hopeful that the right guy is he did pretty well.
Metalis has I mean, full faith and trust, as it says on money or whatever it says. Right?
I mean, he's got in
Terry Metalis we trust, all else require cash.
He's got some work over in DC, right? Is that where he is now?
Yeah, and you know what's funny? When I was watching that movie, Brad, Enemy Mine recently, I actually said, well, what if there was but before the Federation was Jonathan Archer, what if there was a competitive agency that was actually flying to a different part of the galaxy? They're like, well, okay, we know they're trying to get the UFP together, the Vulcans and stuff like that. But what if there was actually, a different group of people and that was their story before the Federation was formed, like 2149 or something, I that's how I think of it. I always try like, could this fit into the Star? Because I believe even Star Wars could fit into the Star Trek universe because Star Wars was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far
Far,
away.
far away.
So I accept that. Okay, it's probably the same universe, just a different galaxy.
Hmm.
I've already taken notes on some stuff. So, but all right, gentlemen, we need to have you back to talk
Yeah,
more
we
about
will
this. There were
definitely have
actually
you back.
there was a couple other questions I wanted to ask about some different topics, but that just gives us an excuse
To
to
do
have you
this
back
again.
again.
You are my favorite podcast about RPGs. You really
Well,
are.
thank you so
I
much.
love
Oh,
listening. In fact, I finally caught up and listened to the weather. What's the
Oh,
meteorologist?
Katie,
Katie Nicolai.
she's
Oh,
so good.
that
She's
was so
just
fun.
neat.
Katie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
find her on if
Find
you
her
aren't
on Twitter,
following her on
follow her.
X,
She's
And
follow
so
her.
good.
and
You
did
know,
you mention and did you mention it or did she? Where I'm like, I want to put her and Dr. Aaron McDonald on the same podcast. I thought that in my mind while I was listening to it. Have you
Oh,
you
heard
that
them?
would be good.
that
I
would be
haven't heard
good,
that.
but I
I
haven't heard that.
no, I mean
No,
Be
she's
okay.
good.
also just
Something. So I
lovely.
must have been driving and imagining, like I was thinking to
Yeah.
myself, like, oh, this is Dr. Aaron McDonald good. And I was like, if we could
Yeah,
put both of them on
right.
a podcast together, that'd be amazing.
We've
That would
already
make for
we've
a
already asked.
wonderful.
Yeah, and we're gonna have Katie back this fall. As soon as because she's just across the pond from us in Michigan. As soon as the severe weather season ends
That
and
is a
she isn't.
really liberal use of the word pond.
Yeah, I
But
know.
okay.
That's what we call. You know how we
Yeah.
call it. She's
Yeah, we
across
don't
Lake
call it that.
Michigan. As soon as the
Yeah.
severe weather season ends and she isn't necessarily going on
Yeah. Yeah. I
con
was just
tours or
across the
whatever.
pond. We don't
Yeah,
call Michigan that,
Okay,
but okay.
but great
yeah.
Yeah.
show. My point was
That
great
would be
shows. You're
awesome
my
though.
favorite
Yeah. Well, thank you
RPG
very
Oh,
podcast
much.
to
well,
listen
you
to.
were very
We
kind and
always love and are grateful to chat with you
yeah,
on the podcast and off the podcast.
yes.
All right, sir. You live long and prosper. We'll be
You
talking to
too.
you soon.
All right, IDIC.
Well, if it didn't make you think or it didn't make you wonder, then I think you need to go back and re-listen because even
Mhm.
now traditionally we do our intro outro traditionally
Yeah.
after we
This is
record these
days after
after.
we chatted with Michael.
Yeah, and
Right.
traditionally we need to do that because we need time to process. And
And
it
I've been
also
thinking about his ideas since then.
yes, and I still feel I need to ruminate on it more just because um just this idea of thinking from these different perspectives, whether I agree with
Yeah.
them or not, is a
That is a
fascinating
lovely,
thing.
lovely thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I, just so much. That was such a thick conversation that we just couldn't get into more of it, and I want to be able to do that down the road,
Yeah, we
and it
will.
will be fascinating to do that as their campaign and adventure kicks off
Hmm.
as they start playing as they wrap up their existing
Right.
launch their
Right.
new one. So as that wraps up,
Yep.
as we head over to Audubon Court, what's been on your desk or in your hands lately from a
Well,
book or reading
you
perspective?
can probably, I mean, sort of. You probably know where this is going to go, but as of this recording, you have finally watched the entirety of Star Trek
Oh, I
Prodigy
didn't.
season
Yeah,
2.
yeah. As of last
And
night. As of
yep,
last
as of
night.
last night. And so I have been jonesing to talk to you about this for a while, and I'm just going to keep this very brief for the sake of Audubon Court. You and I will talk lots more in the coming weeks, I'm sure, about this. There's a lot to talk about.
But wait, now before we go, if you haven't, because I know Michael has mentioned in the past that he is not going to watch Prodigy until
Okay.
he has a writing project
Right.
that
Right.
he
Don't
needs to
be
finish.
like Michael. It's too
Is
Prodigy season 2 has been
yes,
out for long enough.
yeah.
But
So
okay, spoiler warning.
yes, there you
Okay.
go.
Okay, thank you. I think we're past that point, but it never hurts. So, okay.
Yes.
So, if you have not yet completed your watch of Prodigy season 2, you should just stop the episode now. Go watch
Or
Prodigy season 2.
just listen to us and feel guilty for not watching it and then go watch it.
That even better. Even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So, I think, and I've been saying this now for weeks, but I think that season 2 of Prodigy is easily, truly, surprisingly, some of the absolute best Trek that has ever been made. And here's a Brad's giving me the look, and that's fair because I've
No,
been
no, I'm
thinking
giving you the thought look
you're
because I'm
pondering, right? Yeah,
yeah,
so I shouldn't say you're not giving me that look. You're giving me the other look.
yeah,
So let me defend that
yeah.
because I say this as someone, as you know, who is a hardcore TNG and Picard season 3 fan.
Hmm.
Uh, and all these other things. And I went into Prodigy with season 1 thinking, oh, great, a show for kids, not interested. Seeing the characters, thinking, still not interested. Obviously, loving Nami's music, loving the art direction, loving all these other things. And then getting hooked mid-season 1 by just the story itself. But season 2 is exceptional. And so here's where we're going to drop a whole bunch of spoilers, but I'm going to keep this tight. This is a conversation for another day because look, everybody, we realize that we talk about in the past year and a half, Star Trek more than anything else. Sorry, not sorry. We have lots of other things coming up, and many of them are not going, actually, most of them are not going to be Star Trek. It's just that we're into Star Trek Adventures and now 2E,
Hmm.
and we're talking about it. Brad and I are talking about this all the time offline, as it were. Don't worry. We are going back to our roots, which is RPG and RPG lit writ large. More to come. That said, season 2, Star Trek Prodigy. I think, especially in the second half of this season, the way that the ethos, the values, sorry, Michael, but the values of the Federation and of Starfleet, but of the Federation especially, were put forward at the forefront. And it's always been that way in the show, in the series. But I think especially, right, when the dice were down, the values were still put forward as this is inexcusable. For example, Janeway pushing back against Starfleet leadership, saying, no, doesn't matter what's going on. These are not our values. The way that over the season, all of these late 24th century threads were gently connected, if not tied. It's the first time. See, I'm getting that other Zen look from Brad now. He knows. It's that it's the first time because you and I, Brad, have been asking for this, among ourselves since the late 90s and then the early aughts, after especially after Nemesis, of okay, but what happened? What happened to everything and the geopolitics and the people and the stories? So many threads were put together and done gently, and you had to know, right? If you know, you
Hmm.
know, but they were there. And so now, like being done with Prodigy, as we then hand off to Children of Mars and the start of Picard season 1, now the story of Trek and the galaxy in Trek at the very end of the 24th century, it makes so much more sense. But what really stood out, because we are guys of a certain age, so what got us into the podcast to begin with, that's why we're doing Dice and Mind.
Hmm.
Uh, as one, well, actually, by the time this drops, we'll both be 50. But that's a little surreal. But by the time this drops, we will. Well, Will Wheaton is just a few years in our advance. And, I've said this before, as a kid, as a teen watching TNG, like you you looked up, like I looked up to Picard and Data. Those were the ones I wanted to emulate because of what I saw. But I wanted to be Wesley Crusher because he had the coolest deal in the known galaxy. And then, of course, we just leave his story completely unfinished. Now, with the beauty of what they did with Wesley Crusher as the Traveler in season 2 of Prodigy, and it was more than homage. I mean, it was more than any of us, I think, could have anticipated or asked for. And the fact that this was all thought out before season 1 of Picard even dropped. I mean,
Hmm.
talk about respect. So that's what's been on my mind. Uh, like RPG wise and sci-fi and fantasy, like all of that stuff. That's what's been on my mind more than anything. I did actually just read the second installment of From a Certain Point of View, the the return of the uh oh my God. Empire Strikes Back. the short
Yes.
story collection.
You
I
had that
read
on
that
your
on
trip,
my
right?
trip, right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. But what's been on my mind has been Prodigy and specifically getting to see Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher in honestly maybe the best role he's ever had in Trek. So that's what's been on my table, on my desk. What about you?
I'll give you, because I think we'll probably have to talk more at length, maybe in our episode when we're talking at Lit and everything like that
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Prodigy. Um, just some really brief thoughts because it is 12 hours since I've finished
Yeah, it's fresh
watching
for you.
Prodigy.
Yeah.
And it's very fresh because I binged in effect, what is it? Probably what, 12 episodes in
I
one form or another.
I
Um,
binged I think 17 or 18. Okay, I binged 19 in one sitting. So I hear you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, one, um, I watched a TNG, but not necessarily as it was coming out. I was
Hmm.
more of a rerun follower of
Yeah.
TNG. Thanks to my mother and everything like that, I was kind of a TOS guy. That's really kind of what got me into Trek, and we've talked about that.
Show or films? Show.
Films,
Films.
show and films,
Okay.
but show just because it was on television and when it
See,
was
right.
on
Same for
when it
me.
was on
Right.
UHF TV here,
Right.
it was
You
on.
saw it in reruns, but we were raised on the films.
Yes,
Yep.
but the films absolutely. Um, But from my perspective, I didn't ever want to be Will Wheaton, but having watched it, I always felt like, he deserved kind of a, he was supposed to be in um
In Nemesis, and they
this,
cut
and they
it.
they cut
Oh,
it.
oh, I'm sorry. Not
First
was it
Contact,
First
wasn't it?
Contact? Yep.
Yeah,
First
he
Contact.
was he was cut out in the Riker Troy wedding.
Yep.
So what's really happened to
Oh,
him? He was
Irvin
in a
Berlin.
Starfleet in
Mm,
uniform. What was he? What was he not?
right.
So and obviously I told you could give me some spoilers because I was going to go read them anyway.
Yep.
But as I watched it, I'm like, okay, good. They've really completed
Yes.
a really good story for him.
Yeah.
The only thing that I didn't necessarily like is um I always felt like as he aged as a character in TNG, you could really feel him mature as an adult. And as the adult traveler, he felt a little like skittish to me at times. They played him as skittish, and I know that was what the point of the character was. But it's at some points I'm like, I
Yeah.
think I think they probably didn't need to do that. Much like when you go to Picard season 2 and he shows up to
Season one.
no, that was
Or oh,
season
I'm sorry, that's season
It
two.
was,
You're right.
yeah,
Sorry,
it was
season
season
two.
two. When he
Yeah.
shows up in season 2 as a cameo, I think if they
Yeah.
played him a little more like, if they played him just a little more like that, a little more in Prodigy, I think it would have done him better. It didn't hurt anything.
Hmm.
It's just for me, but seeing the whole kind of storyline arc, and every time I heard Janeway say Mr. Crusher, I'm like, that is just such a cool crossover to
Yes.
hear
Yes.
Voyager and TNG intersect that way,
Yes.
and to have Chakotay and Crusher
Yeah.
have conversations,
Yeah.
and Janeway to have conversations with him,
Yeah.
and then to have, spoiler alert, to have him connect with Gates McFadden at the end, and spoiler alert, to meet his baby brother at the end.
Who is soon going to be going to London because of the schooling.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a fair I think it's fair to call that a criticism though, in
yeah,
terms of
I
the
think I think
yeah,
I think that, and I think
I
they
think
had
that's
to do
fair.
that because, and looking at it, like he had said, all the other travelers had evacuated from that universe because they're like, we're just not going to deal with this.
Isn't that
So he was
interesting?
he was
Yeah.
left to his own devices to save his own universe and his own family. He was moving as fast as he can. He found people and he found a way to do it. So I know what they were doing. It's a choice of creative license. I don't think they did anything wrong. It was just a different. I think it's just a difference of opinion
I
for me. You know.
I say this with respect,
Hmm.
if not actual affection. I think they wrote, and I think this is actually true with the cameo, although I agree less so. I think it seems as if they wrote the character for slash as Will Wheaton, not the other way around, right? Like in season three of Picard, like this was clearly written for Patrick Stewart, right? The character
Yeah.
the Wesley Crusher was clearly written because that's who Will Wheaton is, right?
Yes.
You watch the Ready Room, whatever. It's what makes it fun. That's who he is.
Yes.
He again, we're all about the same age. He has remained way goofier than we have, right? He still has
He's
that youth.
ageless. He's
Yeah,
ageless.
ex yes,
He comes across. He's mature, but he still has this
yes.
quality that reminds me of what it was like to be
Yeah, well
young,
said.
you know?
Also, it occurs to me, remember that this this story arc, this is happening. So let me think for a second. I'll just look at my cheat sheet here.
2382, 2384, I think.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 2380. So so okay, so 23. No, okay. So he's as opposed to being like 50-ish, he's early 30s in that arc.
Yes.
We have to remember he is still I
He's still
completely agree
young,
with yeah.
absolutely.
But yeah, I
He's
agree.
still young, but and also
Well,
he's
we're still young, but go on.
he's still very young
But
in
he's still
that
very young,
timeline.
right? Mm.
And he's let's be honest, he's a decade or something off into being a traveler. All the other travelers, pretty much
And now,
abandoned him.
hold how cool was that though? Talk about storytelling and talk. Okay, this is the single best time travel story I have ever seen anywhere. It actually works. It holds. I love this. Right, and the travelers, they had enough. They went to a different dimension because they were burned out and they had lost too many from the temporal wars, which are still a century or two away,
Yeah.
to just
Yes.
double down on what Wesley Crusher can do and who he is. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, even they even played it out a little bit, like at the end, like the doctor interacting with him in the sick bay saying, with everything that's gone through, you shouldn't be, I'm paraphrasing, you shouldn't be alive, but you're going to be okay. But,
Yeah.
you're going to take a while. Your skills and your powers and
Right,
everything are going to take a while to heal.
right.
Although it seemed pretty okay that he was talking to his mom on the pad, and then all of a sudden he was behind her the next minute at the end of the episode. So he seemed to be healing just fine.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
for a guy who orchestrated the timeline and sacrificed himself so that it would work, not
yes,
bad. Not bad,
yes,
Mr. Crusher.
yeah, and the end, um, you know,
So good.
the end when they gave a Protostar class ship the name Prodigy.
That was, and you know that had to have been the plan from the beginning.
Yes,
That was
that was
so
so
well
good.
done.
Well done. I think the idea of Gwyn as the acting captain, perfect because of who she developed, who how they developed her as a character,
Yeah.
and the idea of Dow as someone who wanted to be a captain and who wanted to be a fast flyer, kind of like a Tom Paris
Paris,
fly
yeah.
by the seat of your
Yeah.
pants type of
We
guy,
we
but
won't get into the fact that she was probably cons sufficiently considerably older than him that their ages should have been an issue. But we'll just let that
yeah,
slide.
but there's also timeline considerations and all that. So I don't think anyone's really. I mean, there's
It's a little brother uncle, but we're gonna let that fly.
we'll let that we'll let
We're
it
gonna
fly.
let that
We'll
go.
let it fly.
Okay.
Um, but point being, um, I it's Nickelodeon. Who cares? Or now Netflix, right? Um,
Oh, both. Well,
both.
it's because it's what Paramount Nickelodeon on Netflix.
Yeah.
Right. We'll see
I
what happens.
I really hope I am now. I would
You want a
I
season
will
three?
I will say that um with Gen Con and Star Trek Las Vegas
Yep.
and San Diego Comic Con, all these things going on and overlapping and everything, I felt like our Twitter/X feed was a little Trek heavy over the
You
past week.
notice? Yeah.
Yeah. Um and so I was doing a little bit of adding some Marvel, some official,
Okay,
like,
that's good. That's why
you
I
know,
keep seeing more Marvel. I've been adding Star Wars to
yeah,
balance it
yeah,
out.
and I'm adding like official stuff. I'm not just adding random people,
Oh no,
but
no.
but you know, all of a sudden now I'm like, oh yeah, I need to jump on this. We need another season of Prodigy because I really want to see now what I want to see what at least one more season they would do with this time period
Yeah.
now, which is now parallel to Picard season one, post synths, while Picard and them are off doing their thing. What's going on with the from a geopolitical perspective?
Oh
What could
yeah.
they get involved with?
Oh yeah.
you know, from a Federation perspective. So selfishly, I would love to see Prodigy as a vehicle for us to see other parts of the Federation. So selfishly, that's why I want to see
Wouldn't that be interesting?
another
Yeah.
another season of it.
Yeah.
That's my Prodigy thing. Um, the the only other thing I'll say before we wrap it up
Yeah.
is, um,
What's on the desk?
yeah, is the my son and I went and saw Deadpool versus Wolverine, which I thought
I
was
haven't. Yeah.
it is well done. The way that maybe I was reading it out to be was that they were going to just stuff it as full as possible of cameos and everything they could to try
And
to
I haven't seen it yet.
and it isn't. There are
Yeah,
you know
I've read
and
that.
and you've seen them out there. I'll again, spoiler warning, you can go and they brought Wesley Snipes back as Blade for
A classic. Just
which
such a good soundtrack.
I thought was awesome. I mean, the whole beginning, and you've seen this, the whole beginning of it is Blade, not Blade, is Deadpool dancing to Bye 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 by NSYNC, using the bones of Wolverine, killing off,
Oh,
let's
I
just
saw a clip
say,
of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
killing off adversaries. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
It's
See, I haven't
funny.
seen the second movie yet.
So
I need
yeah,
to
that's
catch
fun.
up.
You gotta watch that one. And the character, I think the best character in that whole movie is Domino in the second movie.
Okay.
So if you go into that and you
Okay.
watch Domino as a character, I think it makes the movie even better.
Okay.
So when you have time,
Okay, good.
but that you don't have to see the second movie
Yeah, that's
to
what I've
enjoy the
heard.
third one.
Yeah,
But
I would like to see this one.
point being, I came back home. I was in the car with Trent and my son, and I came back home and I'm like, I really need to, I'm really, the Marvel vibe. So I pulled out my Marvel RPG
Yeah.
game from the bookshelf from Matt Forbeck, who's been on our
Yep.
show.
Yep.
And there is and I took a picture of it and I posted it out on Twitter. It's out there of the one-off Deadpool
Saw
adventure.
that. That's funny.
And Trent has agreed um, to play it. And I think he has a friend that will do it as well.
Well, let's F and
Um,
go.
so yeah. So one of these days,
That's great.
um, I think I'll get his friend and we'll do it down here in the basement where I record.
Nothing
Um,
pulls a family together like wanton fictional violence.
yeah, yes. And I don't know if one of them will want to be Deadpool or if I'll have him as an NPC PC or what the case may be. But um he paged through the book. Um he paged through the Deadpool book. I noticed he came out from his room and I talked to him about it, and he paged through the Deadpool adventure,
Yeah.
which is like comic book size. It's really
Oh,
neat the way
nice.
it came out.
Okay.
It's like a comic book
Clever.
in a way in terms of its size and paperback. And then a little bit later, he came out, and while I was watching something on TV, he took the Marvel core rulebook and he was paging through that over sitting on the couch while I was doing something else. Um, and so, which he normally doesn't do.
Very good.
So,
Very good.
um, so I think, yeah, we'll see. I think um, that's coming down the pike, and
You
we'll
have to
have to see.
report. Well, I have
Yeah.
to report in an upcoming episode how that goes.
Yes. Yes. So,
Very good. All right, everybody. Thanks as always for being with us. We have a bunch of interesting conversations coming up this month and next already on the docket. Not a whole lot of Trek, but a whole lot of other things. Some returning guests, some new guests. Stay tuned. As always, be well, stay well. We will see you in a couple of weeks.